Seth Larkin stood before the crumbling gatehouse of Thornmark Keep and wondered if dying in a city gutter might have been preferable to freezing in this God's forsaken ruin. The inheritance letter had arrived 3 months after his uncle's death, a cruel joke from a man he'd met twice in childhood, offering him a border keep so dilapidated that even the crows seemed to avoid it. But Seth had nothing else, no family, no prospects, just gambling debts that would see his kneecaps broken if he stayed in the capital another week. So he'd taken the crumbling keep at the edge of orc territory, planning to vanish into obscurity, maybe sell whatever stones weren't already stolen, and disappear into the wilderness beyond. The keep itself was a skeleton of what it must have been generations ago. 2 of the 4 towers had collapsed entirely, their stones scattered across the courtyard like broken teeth. The main hall's roof had caved in on the eastern side, and the walls were pocked with holes where mortar had crumbled away. Dead vines covered everything, brown and brittle in the late autumn air. Seth pushed through the sagging wooden gate and entered the courtyard, his breath misting in the cold. A well stood at the center, and when he peered down into it, he could at least see water glinting far below. That was something. He spent the first night in what remained of the gatehouse, huddled in his travel cloak with his horse tied nearby. The wind howled through the broken stones, and several times he heard sounds in the darkness: movement, whispers, the scrape of something heavy being dragged. He told himself it was just the wind, just animals, just his imagination fueled by exhaustion and fear. When dawn finally came, pale and cold, he ventured out to assess what he'd truly inherited. The answer was almost nothing. The storerooms were empty except for broken barrels and rat droppings. The armory had been stripped clean years ago. Even the Lord's chambers, which should have held furniture or tapestries, contained only debris and bird nests. Seth sat on a chunk of fallen masonry and laughed bitterly at his situation. He'd fled the city to escape death, only to starve to death in a ruin instead. "You are the new human lord." The voice came from behind him, deep and feminine, with an accent that turned the words into something almost musical. Seth spun around so fast, he nearly fell off his stone seat. 4 figures stood in the courtyard entrance, and even in the weak morning light, there was no mistaking what they were. Orcs. Green-skinned, powerfully built, with small tusks protruding from their lower jaws and pointed ears. They wore practical clothing, leather and wool, clearly made for work and weather. The one who had spoken stood at the front, taller than the others, with her dark hair bound in multiple braids threaded with small bones. Her amber eyes studied him with an intensity that made his mouth go dry. Yes. I'm Seth Larkin. I inherited this place." His hand moved instinctively toward the knife at his belt, though he knew it would be useless against 4 armed orcs. "From Aldrich Larkin," the lead orc said. It wasn't a question. He was the last human to hold this keep. "Before he died, we had an arrangement." Seth's heart hammered. Arrangements with orcs were the stuff of horror stories in the capital: blood tributes, servitude, worse. "What kind of arrangement?" The orc woman took a step closer. The other 3 spread out slightly, not threatening but definitely blocking any escape route. "My name is Frater Wraithwood. These are my sisters Fenna, Fira, and Fala." She gestured to each in turn. The second tallest had a scar across her cheek and carried a hunting bow. The third was stockier, with arms that looked like they could bend iron bars. The youngest appeared close to Seth's own age, maybe 20 summers, with bright, curious eyes that darted around the courtyard. "This keep sits on the border of our clan's territory. Aldrich paid us in meat and grain to ensure raiders left this place alone. When he grew too old to hunt or farm, we brought him food in exchange for shelter during harsh winters. He died owing us 3 months of provision. I don't have any food, Seth said quickly. I barely have enough for myself for a week. We know. Freda's expression didn't change. We have been watching since you arrived yesterday. You came with almost nothing. You plan to salvage what you can and disappear, yes. The accuracy of her assessment made Seth's face burn. What does it matter to you? It matters because this keep is useful to us. It has a well that never runs dry, even in summer. It has walls that can be repaired, a forge that could work again, and land that could be farmed. We have lost our place in our clan. Freda's jaw tightened, and for a moment something painful flickered in her amber eyes. Our mother was chieftain. She made peace with humans, traded with border settlements, refused to raid. The young warriors called her weak. When she died, they drove us out. We are outcasts. We need a place to survive the winter, and you need people who know how to survive in this land. Aldrich was our ally. You will be as well. And if I refuse, the youngest sister, Fala, laughed a bright, startling sound. Then you will freeze or starve or be killed by raiders before the first snow. This is not a request, human. You belong to us now. The phrasing sent a strange shiver down Seth's spine. Not a threat exactly, but a declaration of possession that should have terrified him. Instead, he found himself studying these 4 orc women and seeing not monsters but exiles just like him. People who had nowhere else to go. What exactly are you proposing? He asked carefully. We will repair the keep, Freda said. We will hunt and forage and prepare this place for winter. In exchange, we live here. We share resources. We protect each other. When spring comes, we decide if we continue this arrangement or part ways. Seth looked around at the ruins again. I'm a terrible carpenter. I can't hunt. I've never farmed. I'm useless to you. You can keep records. You can read and write, yes. You have a noble name, even if it is attached to nothing now. That has value on the border. Freda extended her hand, palm up. Do we have an agreement? It was insane. It was dangerous. Humans who allied with orcs were called traitors if they were lucky, and worse things if they weren't. But Seth had already abandoned his old life. What did it matter if he sank further into disgrace if it meant survival? He reached out and clasped her hand. Her skin was warm, her grip strong enough to crush his fingers if she wanted to. We have an agreement. The transformation of Thornmark Keep began that very day. Freda organized the work with military precision, assigning tasks based on ability. Fenna, the scarred hunter, disappeared into the forest and returned before noon with 2 rabbits and a pheasant. Fira, the strongest, began hauling broken stones out of the main hall and sorting them by size for repairs. Fala explored every corner of the ruins, somehow finding things. Seth had missed a cache of rusty tools in a collapsed cellar, a barrel of nails that had rolled into a crevice, even a few pieces of intact furniture in one of the tower rooms. Seth's job was to inventory everything and plan how to use their limited resources. It was humiliating to admit, but paperwork was the only skill he had. In the capital, he'd been a clerk for a merchant house until his gambling habit had seen him dismissed. Now he sat in the least damaged corner of the gatehouse with a piece of charcoal and precious paper, making lists and calculations while 4 orc women did actual productive work around him. You look troubled, Fenna said that evening as they gathered around a small fire in the courtyard. She was skinning the rabbits with quick, practiced movements, her hands steady and sure. I feel useless, Seth admitted. You're all working so hard and I'm just writing things down. Strategy is work, Fira rumbled. She was sitting on a stone block, sharpening an axe blade with long, methodical strokes. Warriors who charge without planning die quickly. Are you a warrior? Seth asked. Fira's expression darkened. I was, We all were in our own ways. Our mother trained us to defend our clan. But when she died and the new chieftain took power, he said we were tainted by human sympathy. He challenged Freda to single combat for the right to stay. She won, but he called the victory false. Said she fought with human tricks instead of orcish strength. They exiled us at dawn the next day. Seth tried to imagine being cast out from the only home you'd ever known, declared unworthy by your own people. It was too familiar. "I'm sorry." "Do not be sorry," Freda said, emerging from the darkness with an armload of dry wood. "Being cast out saved our lives." The new chieftain led 3 raids into human territory in the first month. The king's soldiers came with fire and steel. Our old clan settlement is ashes now. Most of them are dead. She dropped the wood near the fire and sat down, her movements heavy with exhaustion. "We would have been killed too if we had stayed." The silence that followed was profound. Seth looked at these 4 women and saw the weight they carried: survivors' guilt, grief, anger, all bottled up behind stoic faces. "Tell me about your mother," he said quietly. "What was she like?" For a moment he thought they wouldn't answer. Then Fala spoke, her young voice soft with memory. She was strong, not just in body but in will. She believed orcs and humans could trade instead of fight, that both peoples would be richer for it. She learned some of the human language and taught us. She made agreements with border settlements. Our warriors would help drive off bandits, and they would share grain during lean winters. It worked for 10 years. 10 years of peace. The warriors grew soft, Fenna added bitterly. That's what the young ones said. They wanted glory and battle scars and songs about their conquests. They didn't want to guard caravans and trade smoked meat for wheat. Seth stirred the fire with a stick, watching sparks spiral into the dark sky. "My uncle Aldrich was the disgrace of our family. He refused a position at court to live out here alone. The family called him a coward and a hermit, but maybe he just wanted peace too." "He did," Freda confirmed. "When we first met him, he was building this keep's defenses alone. I was 16 summers old, just beginning my warrior training. My mother sent me to scout the human construction. Aldrich saw me watching from the forest and invited me to share his fire. He said if we were to be neighbors, we might as well be friendly ones." Her lips curved in a slight smile, the first Seth had seen from her. "He was very old even then, but his mind was sharp. He taught me the human words for tools and building. I taught him which plants in the forest were safe to eat. For 15 years, we helped each other when we could." "He never mentioned any of you in the inheritance letter," Seth said. "Of course not. Writing down an alliance with orcs would have invalidated the inheritance. Human law forbids it." Freda's amber eyes fixed on him. "But he trusted that whoever came would either honor his debts or be desperate enough not to care about orcish help. You are the second, yes." Seth laughed despite himself. "Completely desperate. I have gambling debts in the capital that would take me 10 years to pay. Coming here was the only way to stay alive." "Then we are the same," Fira said. "Desperate exiles trying to survive winter." Something shifted in that moment. They weren't captor and prisoner, or even just reluctant allies. They were 6 people with nowhere else to go, clinging to a ruin and each other because the alternative was death or despair. The work continued for weeks. The days grew shorter and colder, but the keep slowly became livable. They cleared the main hall entirely and managed to patch the roof well enough to keep out most of the rain. Fenna hunted nearly every day, bringing back deer and wild turkeys and once even a young boar. Fira worked on repairing the well's pulley system and reinforcing the gatehouse doors. Fala, who turned out to have an unexpected talent for cooking, transformed their meager ingredients into meals that actually tasted good. Freda directed everything while also doing whatever heavy labor was needed. her strength and stamina seemingly inexhaustible. Seth kept records, rationed supplies, and slowly learned practical skills from watching the sisters work. Fenna taught him to set snares for rabbits. Fala showed him which winter plants had edible roots. Even Fira, the most reserved of the four, occasionally explained her repair work, pointing out which stones were load-bearing and how to mix proper mortar. But it was Freda who fascinated him most. She was always moving, always planning, always 3 steps ahead of any problem. When a section of wall collapsed during a storm, she had the stones cleared and sorted before dawn. When their food stores ran lower than expected, she led a 3-day hunting expedition that brought back enough meat to smoke and preserve for weeks. She was magnificent, powerful, and intelligent, and completely dedicated to protecting her sisters. Seth found himself watching her more than he should, noticing the way firelight caught in her dark braids, the grace in her movements despite her size, the rare smiles she gave when one of her sisters made her laugh. It was a dangerous fascination. Orcs and humans didn't mix that way. The taboo was absolute on both sides. But then, he was already in exile. What did one more broken taboo matter? The first snow came in early winter, a light dusting that made the ruins look almost beautiful. Seth woke to find Fala standing in the courtyard with her arms outstretched, catching snowflakes on her palms and laughing. The sound made him smile despite the cold. "She loves snow," Freda said from beside him. Seth startled he hadn't heard her approach. "When she was a child, she would dance in the first snowfall every year. My mother would watch from the longhouse door and smile. I had forgotten that memory until now." "It's a good memory," Seth offered. Freda nodded slowly. Her breath misted in the cold air, and she pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders. "I have been thinking, Seth Larkin. When spring comes, what will you do?" The question caught him off guard. He'd been so focused on surviving each day that he hadn't thought much beyond winter. "I don't know. I can't go back to the capital. Maybe I'll try to make this keep actually functional, find some way to earn a living on the border." "Doing what?" "I have no idea," he admitted with a laugh. "I'm still useless at most practical things." "You are not useless." Freda's voice was firm. "You think ahead. You solve problems with planning instead of force. You have kept us organized and prevented waste. Those are valuable skills." She paused, then added more quietly, "You also treat us with respect. You do not flinch when we speak. You do not watch us like we are animals that might attack. Do you know how rare that is?" Seth looked at her, really looked at her, and saw vulnerability beneath the warrior's exterior. "Your people," he said simply. "Why would I treat you as anything else? Because humans do. Because even the ones who traded with us kept their distance, always ready to run or fight. But you sit at our fire and eat from the same pot and laugh at Fala's jokes. You." She trailed off, seeming to struggle for words. "You make us feel less alone." His heart did something complicated in his chest. "You make me feel less alone too." They stood in silence, watching Fala spin in the snow while Fenna and Fira emerged from the main hall to join her. The moment felt suspended, fragile and precious. Seth wanted to say more, to tell Freda that he'd been alone long before he came to Thornmark, that his life in the capital had been a hollow thing full of bad decisions and worse company, that these past weeks with her and her sisters had been the first time in years he'd felt like he had a purpose. But the words tangled in his throat, too big and too dangerous to speak. Freda broke the silence first. "Come. We should join them before all our heat escapes the hall." The winter deepened, bringing harsh winds and heavy snows. They were trapped inside for days at a time, huddled around the hearth in the main hall. It should have been miserable, but instead those snow-bound days became unexpectedly pleasant. Fenna taught Seth and Fala a dice game from her childhood, which led to competitive matches and good-natured arguments. Fira revealed she could carve wood, and she made small figurines during the long evenings, animals and warriors, and once, embarrassingly, a small figure of Seth sitting with a book. Fala sang songs in orcish, her voice clear and haunting, while translating the words for Seth so he could understand the stories of ancient heroes and doomed lovers. And Freda talked. She told stories about growing up in the clan, about her mother's wisdom and her own training as a warrior. She described the orcish view of honor, that true strength meant protecting those weaker, that glory without purpose was empty. She spoke of her fears for the future, her worry that her sisters would never find a place to truly belong. In return, Seth shared his own story. His parents' death when he was young, his uncle's indifference, his drift into gambling and debt as a way to feel something, anything, beyond emptiness. He told them about the night he'd won 3 months' wages on a single dice roll, then lost it all plus everything he'd saved in the next hour. About the merchant who'd loaned him money at brutal interest, then sent enforcers when Seth couldn't pay. About the inheritance letter that had arrived like a gift from the gods themselves, offering escape just when he needed it most. "You ran away," Fala said. It wasn't an accusation, just an observation. "Yes," Seth admitted. "I ran away. So did we," Fenna said. "When our clan exiled us, we could have fought, could have tried to kill the new chieftain even if it meant dying. But Freda said running was wiser, living was wiser. She was right. Running is not cowardice if you run towards something instead of just away," Freda added. "We ran toward survival, toward the possibility of a new life. That takes its own form of courage." Seth met her eyes across the fire and felt that complicated thing in his chest again, warm and terrifying. He was falling in love with her. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He loved the way she cared for her sisters, the way she planned for every contingency, the way she listened when he spoke like his words actually mattered. He loved her strength and her vulnerability, her rare smiles and the fierce intelligence behind her amber eyes. It was the worst possible thing he could do, but he couldn't seem to stop. The turning point came on a bitter afternoon in deep winter. Seth was in the gatehouse checking their inventory when he heard Fenna shout an alarm. He rushed outside to find the 4 sisters armed and facing the gate. Beyond the walls, voices called in orcish, rough, aggressive voices. "What is it?" Seth asked. "Scouts from our old clan," Freda said grimly. She held a spear, her knuckles white around the shaft. "They have been tracking us." The gate shuddered under heavy blows. Seth's mind raced. "How many?" "6, maybe 8, Fenna said. "I saw them from the wall before I came down." "We can hold the gatehouse," Fira said. "Force them to come through the narrow door, take them one at a time." "No," Freda's voice was flat. "They will burn us out or wait until we starve, and if they see Seth, they will know we are harboring a human. That makes us traitors by clan law. They will not stop hunting us." Seth's stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" She turned to look at him, and her expression was desolate. "I am saying you should hide. We will tell them you died, that this keep is abandoned. They will search, maybe take what they want, then leave. You will be safe. And you?" "We are already exiled. They cannot punish us worse than they have." The gate shuddered again, harder. Seth heard splintering wood. In moments, the scouts would break through. He thought about hiding, about letting these 4 women face their former clan mates alone. About letting them lie and risk being discovered, all to protect him. Then he thought about how Freda had shared her fire with him, how her sisters had taught him to survive, how they'd worked together to make this ruin livable. He thought about sitting in the capital, alone and drowning in debt, versus standing here with people who actually cared if he lived or died. "No," he said firmly. We face them together. Seth, I'm the lord of this keep, he interrupted. Worthless as that title is, it means this is my responsibility. They're here because you're here, and you're here because of me. We face them together, or I go out there alone and tell them to leave. They will kill you, Fenna said bluntly. Maybe, but I'm tired of running away. He looked at Freda and let her see the truth in his eyes. I'm tired of being alone. If standing with you means dying, then at least I'll die mattering to someone. Freda stared at him for a long moment. Then something shifted in her expression, surprise, then warmth, then something deeper that made his breath catch. You stupid, brave human, she said softly. Very well. We fight together. The gate gave way with a crash of splintering wood. 8 orcish warriors poured into the courtyard, armed with axes and clubs. They were bigger than the sisters, scarred and savage-looking, and they fanned out with the confidence of experienced fighters. Frater Wraithwood, the leader said. He was massive, with ritual scars covering his arms and a notched axe in his grip. The chieftain sends greetings. You are commanded to return to the clan. We are exiled, Freda said coldly. The chieftain has no authority over us. The chieftain has changed his mind. Winter is hard. We need warriors, even tainted ones. The leader's eyes scanned the courtyard and landed on Seth. Who is this human? This is Seth Larkin, Lord of Thornmark Keep. We have an alliance with him. The warriors erupted in harsh laughter. An alliance with a human. You disgrace yourself further, Freda. The chieftain was right to cast you out. The leader spat on the ground. Come with us now and the human can live. Refuse and we kill him and drag you back in chains. You will leave this place, Freda said, her voice dangerous. You have no right to be here. We have the right of strength. The leader took a step forward. You are 4 against 8. The human does not count. Submit or die. Seth's hand went to his belt knife, inadequate as it was. His heart hammered, but he forced himself to step forward next to Freda. This is my land. You are trespassing. Leave now or face the consequences. The leader laughed again. What consequences, human? Will you write us a harsh letter? No, Seth said. But I'll make sure everyone on the border knows that orcish warriors break peace agreements and attack neutral keeps. I'll make sure every human settlement and every orcish clan knows your chieftain's name and that his warriors are oath breakers. You think winter is hard now. Wait until no one will trade with you, until the king's soldiers hunt you as raiders. The laughter died. The leader's expression darkened. You are bluffing. I kept records for the largest merchant house in the capital. I know how to send messages. I know which border lords hate orcs and would love an excuse to mobilize their troops. I know which orcish clans are rivals of yours and would spread word of your chieftain's dishonor. Seth kept his voice steady, praying they couldn't hear the fear beneath his words. You can kill me, but my death will bring consequences your chieftain cannot afford. Or you can leave now, empty-handed, and report that Frater Wraithwood is not worth the trouble. The scouts exchanged glances. Seth could see the calculation in their eyes, weighing the risk. Finally, the leader turned back to Freda. You would side with this human against your own kind. My own kind exiled me and killed my mother's legacy, Freda said flatly. This human has shown me more honor in 2 months than my clan did in 20 years. Yes, I side with him. The silence stretched painfully. Then the leader lowered his axe. You are no longer orc, Frater Wraithwood. You are human lover, oath breaker, disgrace to your blood. If we see you again, there will be no talk, only death. I understand, Freda said. Leave now. The scouts backed toward the broken gate, weapons still ready, clearly expecting a trap. When they reached the courtyard entrance, the leader spat once more. The human's words will not protect you forever. When spring comes and raiders return, you will wish you had accepted the chieftain's mercy. Then they were gone, disappearing into the forest beyond the walls. For a long moment no one moved, then Fala let out a shaky breath. That was close. That was insane, Fenna corrected. Seth, you know you just made a permanent enemy of an entire orcish clan. Yes, I know, Seth said. His hands were shaking with delayed fear, but he felt oddly light. But they were going to take you. I couldn't let that happen. Freda turned to face him fully. Her amber eyes were bright with unshed tears. Why? Why would you risk everything for us? The question hung in the cold air. Seth knew this was the moment he could deflect, make a joke, pretend it was just strategy or basic decency. Or he could tell the truth and risk everything for a second time today. He chose truth. Because I love you, he said simply. Because somewhere between hauling stones and sharing rabbit stew and listening to your stories, I fell completely in love with you. All of you, really Fenna and Fira and Fala, you've become like the family I never had. But you, Freda, you're everything. You're strong and brilliant, and you care so deeply about your sisters that it makes my chest hurt. And I know it's impossible. I know humans and orcs don't do this, but I couldn't let them take you without telling you how I feel. Even if you don't feel the same, even if this ruins everything, I needed you to know that someone loves you, that someone thinks you're worth fighting for. Freda stared at him. Then, to his complete shock, she started laughing. Not cruel laughter, but the warm, genuine sound of someone utterly surprised by joy. You foolish man, she said. You beautiful, stupid, brave, foolish man. Then she closed the distance between them in 2 strides, cupped his face in her large, warm hands and kissed him. It was nothing like Seth had imagined kissing might be. Freda's tusks pressed against his skin, careful and gentle. Her lips were soft and tasted like winter air and wood smoke. The kiss was tentative at first, then deeper, full of all the longing and loneliness they'd both been carrying. When they finally broke apart, Seth was dizzy and breathless and happier than he'd been in his entire life. I love you too, Freda said quietly. I have been trying not to, because it seemed cruel to want what we cannot have. But when you stood beside me today, when you risked your life for us, I knew I could not hide it anymore. You belong to us, Seth Larkin, and we belong to you. This is very sweet, Fenna said dryly, but can we perhaps have this conversation inside where it is warm and we can bar the door properly? They laughed and retreated to the main hall, working together to drag heavy furniture in front of the broken gate. That night, they sat around the fire and talked honestly about what came next. The scouts would report back. The chieftain might send more warriors, or he might decide they weren't worth the trouble. Either way, Thornmark Keep was no longer a temporary shelter, it was home, and they would defend it. We need more supplies, Fira said. Better weapons. The gate must be fully repaired before spring. I can make the journey to the nearest human settlement, Seth offered. Trade some of the salvage from the keep for what we need. They will not trade with you if they know you harbor orcs, Fenna pointed out. Then I won't tell them. I'll say I'm a hermit lord trying to rebuild my inheritance. It's not even a lie, Fala grinned. A hermit lord with an orcish wife. The songs will be very confused. Seth felt his face heat. I don't want to assume, Freda said, amusement dancing in her eyes. In orcish custom, a declaration of love in front of witnesses is as binding as any ceremony. You claimed me, Seth Larkin. I claimed you. We are bound now if you want to be. I want to be, Seth said immediately. More than anything, good. Then it is settled. She leaned over and kissed him again, brief and sweet. When spring comes, we will build something new here. A place where exiles and outcasts can survive. A place where humans and orcs can live in peace, the way my mother always wanted. The winter continued, but it no longer felt like mere survival. They worked together to strengthen the keep, planning improvements for spring. Seth made 2 trips to the nearest settlement, trading salvaged iron and stone for tools, seeds, and other supplies. The villagers were suspicious, but took his money and asked few questions. He heard rumors on his second trip, whispers about orcish raiders in the hills, about a clan torn apart by internal conflict. He reported it all back to Freda, and they adjusted their plans accordingly. The relationship between Seth and Freda grew deeper as winter slowly released its grip. They learned each other's habits and histories, shared hopes and fears. Freda taught him orcish words and customs. Seth shared human poetry and philosophy. They argued sometimes about repair priorities, about how much risk to take, about whether to reveal their arrangement to any outsiders. But the arguments never lasted because they both understood the fundamental truth. They were building a life together, and that was worth any disagreement. Her sisters adapted to the relationship with varying degrees of commentary. Fenna treated it as a tactical alliance, occasionally offering advice on maintaining a balanced partnership between different fighting styles. Fira was quietly approving, once mentioning that Seth had proved his strength in ways that matter. Fala was delighted, calling them disgustingly romantic and insisting on hearing every detail of their time together. When the first green shoots appeared through the last patches of snow, they held a meeting in the main hall. The keep was livable now, not luxurious, but solid and warm, with a repaired roof and reinforced walls. Their stores would last until the summer crops came in. They had survived the winter against all odds. The question now is what we do with what we have built, Freda said. Do we stay isolated or do we reach out? Reach out to who? Fenna asked. Humans will not welcome us. Orcs have declared us traitors. There are other exiles, Seth said slowly. An idea had been forming in his mind for weeks. Other people cast out by both sides, humans who sympathize with orcs, orcs who question the endless raiding. What if we offered them a place here? What if Thornmark became a sanctuary? That is a dangerous dream, Fira warned. It would make us a target. We are already targets, Freda said. But together we are stronger. And if we could build something here, something that proves humans and orcs can live in peace, perhaps others would follow that example. They talked deep into the night, planning and arguing and dreaming. By dawn, they had agreed. Thornmark Keep would become a sanctuary for those rejected by both human and orcish society. It would take time and work and enormous risk, but it was a purpose worth fighting for. The first test came in early spring when a young orc woman arrived at their gate, alone and injured. She had been cast out from her clan for refusing a forced marriage. Freda brought her inside, tended her wounds, and offered her shelter. The orc woman, Gara, stared in shock at the sight of a human sitting at the same table as orcs. This is Seth, my mate, Freda explained. This is his keep and we share it. If you wish to stay, you will respect our alliance. Gara agreed, though Seth could see the doubt in her eyes. But over the following weeks, as she healed and helped with the spring planting, the doubt faded. She saw how Seth and Freda worked together, how the 4 sisters treated him as family. She saw that peace between humans and orcs was not just possible but real. More came as spring turned to summer. A human deserter from the king's army, disgusted by the brutality he'd been ordered to commit against orcish civilians. 2 young orc warriors who had questioned their chieftain and been beaten for it. A human woman fleeing an abusive marriage. One by one, word spread through whispered conversations and coded messages. There was a place on the border where the old hatreds did not rule, where you would be judged by your character rather than your race. By midsummer, Thornmark Keep housed 20 people, a mix of humans and orcs, all exiles, all searching for a better way. They built new structures in the courtyard, planted extensive gardens, and established trade relationships with a few brave border settlements. It was hard work and there were conflicts, but Freda's leadership and Seth's diplomatic skills kept things running. The true test came when a human merchant arrived requesting to trade. He was nervous, clearly aware of the keep's reputation, but his goods were high quality and his prices fair. Seth negotiated the deal while Freda stood nearby, a visible reminder that this was a mixed community. The merchant agreed to return monthly, and Seth knew word would spread. Thornmark Keep was legitimate, not just a bandit hideout or a monster's lair. On a warm summer evening, Seth and Freda climbed to the top of the repaired gatehouse tower and looked out over the keep. Lights glowed in the windows below. Voices drifted up, laughter and conversation in both human and orcish languages. The gardens were green and thriving. The walls stood strong. "We did this," Freda said softly. "When I was cast out, I thought my life was over. I thought we would simply survive until we died, but we built something worth living for." Seth took her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "You told me that running towards something is its own form of courage. Thank you for teaching me that. Thank you for standing beside me when you had every reason to run." She leaned down and kissed him, gentle and loving. "My mother dreamed of peace between our peoples. She never lived to see it. But here, in this small place, we have created what she wanted. That matters." "It matters," Seth agreed, "and it is only the beginning." Below them, Fala started singing one of the orcish songs she loved about heroes who changed the world through bravery and compassion. Other voices joined in, human and orc blending together in imperfect but beautiful harmony. Seth held Freda close and felt a profound sense of rightness. He had come to Thornmark, keep planning to vanish into obscurity, to escape his failures and die alone. Instead, he had found love, family, purpose, and a home. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges from both human and orcish authorities, people who saw their sanctuary as a threat to the old order. But they had already survived exile, winter, and confrontation. They had built something real and precious in this ruined keep. And they would defend it together, human and orc united, proving that a different future was possible. Seth Larkin, former clerk and failed gambler, had been told by 4 orc sisters that he belonged to them. At the time, it had seemed like a claim of possession. Now he understood the deeper truth. Belonging was not about ownership but about connection, about finding the people who saw your worth and chose to stand with you. He belonged to them, and they belonged to him, and together they belonged to something greater than any of them alone. It was more than he had ever dared to dream, and it was only the beginning of their story.